Have you ever played a game where the screen just freezes completely when you change levels? It feels a bit broken, right? Well, today we're going to fix that by building a smooth, asynchronous loading screen in Godot 4.6, and that's going to keep your game responsive. Welcome back to Godot Dev Checkpoint. Thank you to our new Patreon members, Christoph and Frank Blair. Your generous support is truly appreciated. Now, loading screens aren't just about looking cool. They're essential for keeping your player immersed. In Godot 4.6, we use the resource loader to load scenes in the background. We're going to build a reusable loading manager that you can drop into any project. Now I'm Spaghetti Syntax, let's get building. First, we need something to load. We're going to make a tiny game loop. We need 3 scenes, a main menu, a game level, and then a loading screen to go between them. Now I'm here in an empty project. The first thing I'm going to do is create a new scene. It's going to be a user interface scene. And I'll rename the control node to main menu. Then I'm going to add a label as a child node. Add child node, label. Then I'm going to change the anchor here to top center. Then in the text here, I'm just going to name the title, the loading screens. That's kind of a main menu title example. I'm going to scroll down into our theme overrides here, change the font sizes. I'm going to change it to 100. There we go. And back over here, I'm going to add another child into my main menu, add child node button. I'm going to change the text over here, the inspector to start game. And don't forget to set the anchor to center. All right, I'm going to control S. I'm just going to save it as main menu. And I create another scene, new scene. It's going to be a 3D scene. You know, rename this node to game level. Just so we have something different, right click, add child node, just do a CSG box. So we can see that box, right click, the game level, add child node, just add a camera, 3D. And our CSG box, so it's not just blank. Let's use the icon SVG and drag it as a material. Now we have something we can see in this scene. We need one more scene after we save this one, control S. Just save it as game level, that's fine. And we need a scene, new scene, another user interface. We're going to rename this control node to loading screen. I'm going to right click here, add child node. I'm going to add a progress bar. I'm going to anchor it to the center. I'm going to come over here to the layout, change the layout custom minimum size X to 200 so we can see something. I'm going to control S, save this scene as loading screen is just fine. Now we can transition from the main menu to the loading screen to the game level. Oh, and also in our game level, let's make a way to get to the back to the main menu here. Right click, add child node, do another button. Then we're going to put this in the anchor. Let's put it on the bottom right there. And then we're just going to put the text over here to say main menu. There we go. Now we'll have a way to get back to our main menu. Save that. Then we'll have a complete loop. We're going to need a manager that persists between scenes. In Godot, we're going to use an Autoload or singleton for this. The script's going to handle the heavy lifting of requesting new scene and monitoring progress. So with our root folder here, let's select that. Let's right click, create new. We're going to create a new script. We're just going to call it loading manager, loading underscore manager, create. Then we're going to go and delete this boilerplate code in here. Let's go ahead and save that. And then in our project settings, we can do here in the globals. This is where our autoload is. We're going to set a path to the script we just wrote, which is loading manager, GD, open. Then we need this node name to match this right here, loading manager, just like that, and add. Now we have a global variable enabled. This is our singleton. I'm going to go ahead and close that. Now we have our loading manager GD. What we're going to need here is we're going to define some variables up top here. I set the path to the scene we want to load, which is going to be var scene path. That's going to be of type string. The next we want to add an array to hold the loading progress. So Godot requires a array type here. It's important. An array type here. Just so we can keep track of the progress of what's actually being loaded in. And this is going to be var progress. This will be a type array, like we said. It's going to be initialized empty. And next, we need to prevent loading multiple things at once. All we do is check if loading is still loading. So var loading of type bool will start off as false. And then we need a reference to the loading screen scene path. So whatever our scene is, that's the loading screen. We do that with a const. It's going to be loading. We always do these in caps. A const loading screen path. And that's going to be a type string. Type properly. There it is. Nope. Nope. There it is. That's going to equal to our loading screen. So you type in quotations, res, :/, and then our root folder has our loading screen. So it's just simply loading screen.tscn. Now this has to match, make this smaller, wherever this file path is of the loading screen.tscn. Now, if you're not sure, you can drag and drop onto your folder here. Let's make that a little more straightforward. You can delete this. Then with the cursor here, I can drag this screen and just drop it in with nothing else. And that's the path you want to get. Now you need to make sure this file in the file system matches the casing exactly. Godot is case sensitive on some platforms, mainly Linux. That's just always a good habit to have as well. All right, we'll separate our variable and our const here. Then we're going to enter down a couple times. You're going to write a function called load scene. Load scene. And the target scene is going to be the parameter. And that is going to be of type string. Then we have a return type of void. So we're not going to return anything. First thing we want to do here is save the target path. So we're going to save the path of where we want to go, which is going to be the scene path that we're just passed in. For the scene path in the variable we just set up there, and then to the target scene that we just passed in here. Right here. Perfect. Then we can do here is we can switch to the loading screen immediately. As soon as we click a button, we're going to switch to the screen. How do we do that? We're going to get the tree, the scene we're in, and then we're going to change scene to file. And then we're going to use that const we set earlier of the loading screen path. And there we go. So when we change scene, we're going to change to wherever our loading screen path is set. But we want to wait a little bit because we don't want it going too fast. So we want to wait one frame to let the loading screen appear. We do that with an await keyword. You just do the get tree again, and we want to process the frame, which is going to make it wait at least one frame, or exactly one frame, before we do any requests. And what we're going to request here is we're going to request the background load. So we can start loading the scene we want to load. You want to set something called subthreads. Use subthreads. You want to set that to true. Why? Well, it's for background load. Show you that here in a second. It's going to be in the resource loader. So the resource loader, and in the resource loader, we want a thing called load threaded request. That's kind of parentheses. And what threaded request are we loading? We're going to load the scene path that we've just put into our target here. So scene path, then quotations. We'll make this a little bigger. Enter down a couple times. I'll delete that so we'll see that autocomplete. So this is a type string, which is the hit type, so it makes it run a little faster. If I can control click on these resource loader, you can see it's a class that loads files into memory. And this will give us a chance to actually see if the things are loaded before we pop the player in there. So there's not a lot of pop in, or perhaps the floor isn't there before the player gets there and they fall through it. We don't want that to happen. So we want to make sure the level is actually loaded. Go back to our loading manager here. And this load thread request, this is where the subthread thing comes in handy. So control click on that. It just allows the game engine to use multiple threads at the same time, which makes loading faster, as it says. Now, I like kitchen analogies or like food analogies. Well, so you use subthreads false. They consider that like saying the head chef has to stop plating the food, run to the back, chop all the onions, then come back. While they're gone, the service stops. The game freezes. Now, if use subthreads is true, right here, well, it's like saying the head chef's going to shout an order to the prep cooks, load level 2. And then the prep cooks chops the onions in the background. And then the head chef stays at the pass, plating food, talking to the customers, keeping the loading animation spinning smoothly without interruption. So that said, back in our loading manager, what we want to do here in this load threaded request, we have the scene path and the type it is. What we want to do here is another comma and say use subthreads to true. There we go. But after that, we need to actually allow things to start monitoring to say, is this loading? Is it not loading? So we basically set our loading variable to true. So allow the process, which we're going to write here as second process function, to start monitoring the loading state. So loading equals true. I go to save that. Now you've reached a checkpoint. This one's called the connector. Now what we need to do is we actually need to create a couple scripts, one for the main menu start button, and then the game level main menu button. Now, if you have some experience or you've seen my signals video tutorial, you probably know how to hook up the pressed signal into a new script. And that's what we want to do here. So the load scene function we just wrote in the loading manager, we want to, from our new scripts, we want to call that function in the on button pressed signal. So in that function, we want to do something called loading manager, load scene, and then put in the path to the scene we want to load. So in the start game, we want to load the game level. In the main menu button, we want to load the main menu level. Do you think you want to handle those two scripts by yourself without a hint? Well, go ahead and pause it now. Give it a try. All right, now if you want a little hint here, we can do the first one together. We'll make this smaller. In our main menu, on our root node, what we're going to do is create a new script. Then we're just going to call this main menu. That's fine. Keep that all default for now. Create that. And then we're going to delete all this boilerplate. Don't need that. Then we're going to go on our button here. Let's click on this button. And then we want to go to over here in our inspector. There's a signals tab. Let's go to that. And we're going to double click on this pressed. And then we want to connect to this script we just wrote on button pressed. Keep that all the same and connect. Now we have our on button pressed function in here. Now in this function, what we want to do is we want to actually access the loading manager, the load scene function. So back in our main menu script we just wrote, in this pressed, we want to say, hey, loading manager, right there. And that should pop up as long as you put it into the globals correctly. So you want to go to load scene, which is the function we just wrote. And this wants at least one argument. The argument it wants is a string. The main menu, the string we want to put in there is actually the game level path. And with just so we don't have to type it, what we can do, if it doesn't autocomplete, which it doesn't. So we can delete that. We can take our game level where we want to go. I'm going to drag it into these parentheses, just like that. Now we know our path is correct. I'll make this bigger so you can see all of it, just like that. What we're doing here is we want to pass the path to your game level into our load scene. I'm going to save that. All right. Now let's do the other one. We want to do in the game level. I'll make this smaller again. We want to hook up this button just like we did here in a new script. So go ahead and pause it now and give it a try. Perfect. Hope you gave that a try. If not, let's finish up together. So I can go to my button here. Game level first. I'm going to add a script. So it's going to be game level script is fine. Create that. I'm going to delete this boilerplate stuff. I don't need that. I'll make this, we're going to do this button signal first. Then double click on pressed. Connect it to my game level script I just wrote. Connect. Now I have this function in here. Now I want to actually do the same thing. So, but I want to pass the path to our main menu now, not the game level. So I'm going to do the same thing with loading manager, load scene. And the path we want is the main menu. I'm just going to drag this and drop it right there. Perfect. So that's how it should look on this one. Go ahead and save that. Now when we click Start or Main Menu button, the global manager is going to take over. It switches us to the loading screen and starts the background work. But currently the progress bar doesn't move yet. Now for a little bit of magic. For Godot 4.6, we're going to use the process function to check the status of our load every single frame. If it's done, we swap scenes. If it's still cooking, we're going to update the progress bar. I'm going to go back to our loading manager here. I'm going to, just above this load scene, enter down a couple times. I'm going to start a function, process, autocomplete. Sir, it should pop up. Perfect. And save that. The first thing we want to check is if we're actually loading. If we're in our loading state, then we want to go into this. But if we're not loading, so if not loading, we don't want to be in this process at all. So we're going to return. And then I'll save us from having to account for any nulls if this doesn't exist at all yet. So if this goes by, it means we are loading. So we need to get the status of how much we've loaded. So var status, we're going to do that with the resource loader again. And this time we're going to get something called load threaded get status. And then we're going to get the status of what? Well, the scene path of where we wanted the B scene path. Now remember, we're not loading until we get down here. So we have the target scene is in our scene path here. So we're going to use that scene path and see if it's loaded yet. We're going to do that with our progress variable. It helps if you actually spell progress correctly. So this is going to be the array up here. Progress. There we go. Perfect. And that's what we're going to use. It takes the array with the scene path, and then it's able to check the status of how much is currently loaded. And then after that, we're going to do a little safety check to make sure we're actually in a scene. If we're not in a scene, this loads too fast, which it does sometimes. So safety check. How do we do that? Well, we just check if the scene we're in is actually a scene. So var current scene. And how do we get the scene that we're currently in? Well, we use get tree and just current scene. So this is going to get us the current scene we're in. Now, this is going to ask if this current scene doesn't exist. So if it returns null, what we're going to do is we're going to get out of here. If we do that, if we go past this point and we don't have a scene, well, none of this is going to work. Now that we know that we're in a scene and we're loading, we'll do down a couple times. Now we're going to get our progress bar. So var progress bar. And how do we do that? Well, we'll do the current scene. Since we know it's our loading scene, we can get the node or null. And we're going to get a thing called progress bar. This has to match the path of the node. I'll make this smaller. If I go to my loading screen, this progress bar needs to be spelled exactly how it is here in this get node or null. I make this bigger. Now what is get node or null? Click on that. Now this is going to generate a node path, but it's not going to generate an error if the path does not point to a valid node, because we know we're actually in a proper scene. So we don't need to worry about the error if it's going to be null, because we know it's going to be correct. Go back to our loading manager. Now, if for some reason this is incorrect, well, this if progress bar is going to throw an error for you anyway. Now that we have the progress bar, put enter down. What we're going to do here, we're going to get the real load percentage from 0 to 1. So we actually change that into our value. We're going to use a ternary operator. Now, if you're not familiar with ternary operators, I'll link it in the description. And look here in the documentation. What it is basically is saying how to check for a value, and if that value exists, else do this other thing. And that's all a single line. How does that look in code? Go back to our here. Enter down. What we want to do here is have a real target number. So it can be the real target is going to be that there. And then go into our progress array. Progress into the index 0. We're going to multiply it by 100. So we do have it. We can get out of the decimal range. And we're going to ask the ternary if Well, if our progress size dot size, so we need to make sure there's something in it, because if there's not, we'll crash our game. So if progress size is greater than 0, well, do the progress 0 times 100. If it's not, else, well, we want to return just 0. That means there's nothing in the progress array. But it's just saying set the target progress number inside the list unless the list is empty. If it's empty, just return it to 0 or set it to 0. So now we have actually, well, target. We need to actually smoothly move the bar towards target, towards the target. And then this, we're going to use a kind of a magic number. So we use 30 is going to be the speed. So lower the number equals slower bar. Higher is faster. Great. So the progress bar value, there you go. Move toward the progress bar current value. Then move it towards the real target actual value. And then multiply that by the delta. So it's frame rate independent. So you don't have if you have a better graphics card, it doesn't move faster because we want to be able to see this loading bar. We're going to multiply that by 30, which is the speed we're going to use. Delta times 30. Now we're faking it because our scene is so tiny that it's just going to instantly load to the next screen. We're going to be able to see our loading bar. So this faking it here is the move toward. And it artificially slows down the actual load times, but it's actually chasing the real target. So it's still loading in a way that the real target is. It's just doing it in a way where we can actually see it. What we're telling the bar is just chase the real percentage of what's loaded. Just don't teleport there. So if the load is slow, like a real game, the bar will still fill up slowly, match the actual loading speed, just smoothing out rough jumps. So it doesn't teleport. So perfect. So now we have all the progress bar checked. We can go out of that progress bar if statement. What I need to do here is we want to check if the loading is complete and the bar is visually, I can spell it, right? Full. And then this is going to keeps the loading screen up until the bar actually hits 100%. So how do we do that? Well, we have the status that we got earlier, right here, bar status. We're going to say if the status equals to our resource loader, we use another resource loader call. We use thread load loaded. So then we know we're loaded and the progress bar value is greater than or equal to 100. So now we know our level's fully loaded and our progress bar is fully loaded. Then we can say we're not loading anymore. So loading is false. So then we can get the new scene that we want to go to. New scene resource. And then we can get the resource loader, and the load threaded get. What do we want to get? We want to get the scene we have, which is the target scene. If you remember, our target scene is our scene path. And where you want to go? We want to go into our scene path. Right. So now overview. The process is going to check if we're loading. If we're not going to go in here at all. Then we get the status of what we're actually loaded to. Then we get the current scene and where we're at and make sure we're in a scene. Then we're going to check the progress bar, make sure we still have it. And then if progress bar is not null, well, we're going to go into the real target and get that into the array here and get it into a number we can put into our value of our progress bar. And this is our ternary operator. And then we're going to move towards the final real target loaded value and multiply that by 30 for now. So we slow it down a little bit. And then we're going to check if loading is complete and the bar is visually full. We do that by saying is thread load loaded. If I control click on that, you can see thread load loaded is the resource is loaded successfully and can be accessed by load threaded get, which in our loading manager, we're using load threaded get to get our scene path. It's going to find the scene path, then the new scene. Now that we have our scene path, last but not least, we need to actually load the next scene. We do that by saying get tree, change scene to packed. Now we're going to get the packed scene. And how do we do that? We're going to use the new scene resource that we just got from our scene path of load threaded get. Now this is going to change our scene to our new scene resource. Now we're going to test it. Now, because our game level is basically empty, it's going to load instantly. But our statement for our progress bar is going to make it wait till it's full, faking a heavy load for now. All right, make sure everything's saved. I'll make this smaller. But before we actually run the game, let's go ahead and go back to our 3D game level scene. Then we're going to click on the camera here. And then our camera preview, we're going to be able to see the cube. So I'm going to pull the camera back. Pull the camera up. I'll press E, get to the rotate tool. Or rotate down. Now you can see the cube. Go and save that scene. Then I'm going to press on the main menu here. And then I'm going to press this play button. And then I'm going to set this current scene to our main scene in the project settings. So select current. And then it's going to load our loading screen scene. In the menu here, go ahead and click start game. Watch our progress bar fill out 100. When it hits 100, we switch to the main game scene here. Then we have a main menu button. We'll click on that. Now we have another progress bar. As soon as it loads, it should go to the main menu. You can do this as many times as you like. Fill it to 100, back to the game, main menu, load, back to the main menu. And there you have it, a reusable threaded loading manager using Godot 4.6. Now you can use loading manager.load scene anywhere in your game, from level selection, respawning, or cutscenes. It'll handle that transition smoothly. Now to take this project further, you can try making this screen pretty, adding fading transitions, random tips, or animated spinners to replace the boring default progress bar. I also have an extra video on the Patreon and the Coffee for members. Not only you get the source code, but you can also get another tutorial adding buttons at the end of the load screen. So instead of automatically loading, so say if your player goes and gets a snack. Instead of switching immediately, we want to reveal a head label and a pause. Then the manager is going to wait specifically for a button press before swapping scenes, giving control back to the player. And once again, you can find that all on the Patreon and the Coffee pages. Now, if you found this helpful at all or fun, leave a comment below on what your Godot game dev goals are. Please like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. It really helps out the channel. And thank you to all our current and past Patreon and Coffee members. Your generous support keeps the channel moving. Now, if you want early access to tutorials, source code, or suggesting future tutorials, please consider becoming a member yourself. The links are in the description. I'm Spaghetti Syntax, and remember, always stay curious, and I'll see you at the next checkpoint.